make butternut squash soup today because one of the things we grew in the garden is this butternut squash. And so it's pretty nice, simple ingredients that you can make for this soup that is really delicious. It's kind of a fall favorite. And so we're going to make it. Mabel, the dog, is with us, but it's not for her. Okay, so let me show you the ingredients that we need. We need butternut squash. Okay, it's this shaped squash. We need onion. We need garlic. If you're going to, there's two ways to do this. You could do a slow cooker, which takes, you could turn it on in the morning and be done by the evening, 4 hours minimum, or 8 hours if it's going real slow. Or if you do it on the stovetop, then you're going to need some sort of oil or butter for your sauteing at the beginning. So you need butter if you do it on the short version on stovetop, and you don't have to use butter if you're doing it in a crock pot. And then we have some herbs from the garden to use, and there's 4 different ones that I pulled here that are options for this soup. The first one is this, and do you know what that is? It's got kind of a fuzzy leaf. Sage. The next one I have a little bit of here has a very, very small green leaf. And this one is thyme. And then the next one, large green leaves, parsley. And the last one, oregano. So you can use different kinds of spices in it. Salt and pepper are pretty definites that would make it taste nice. But the other herbs, it just kind of depends on what you have on hand and what you like. So the first thing you need to do is get the squash ready. So this squash has a real thin skin, but usually people will still take the skins off for cooking. So I have compost bin here. I'm going to put some of these things that we're not cooking into the compost. And so I'm going to cut it in half first. And there's only one end really that has the seed in it. So the other end is almost all solid. So, now I wasn't sure how this was going to look, because the truth is, the one that I'm using for this demonstration was one of the less choice ones. It has a bad spot in it that was a little soft, so I'm going to cut that off and put that bad spot in the compost. So if you see something that looks less desirable, you're right. But I didn't want to waste the rest of this squash because it has a bad spot in it, so I'm just going to take that out. And then you need to get out the pulp and the seeds. So remove this stuff. A little bit. Okay, well, let's clean out the seeds and then I'll see if there's anything else I want to cut off. So, just like you would for a pumpkin, you're going to get out those seeds. And since I'm using one, like I said, that wasn't the best squash that I had on hand, but I'm saving the best ones to give some away to you guys in class. So this had a little bruise spot. All right, let me clean this other side out, and I'm gonna cut one more open. And the tough thing about recipes is they'll say 1 butternut squash, but it depends on the size of your squash. Especially if you're growing from your garden or you're buying at farmer's market, you're going to see there's a lot of variety in sizes of how large they're going to get. This is kind of a smaller one that I have here. So I think I'll need more than just 1 butternut squash for my recipe. So I'll do a little bit more on that in a while, but you guys don't have to watch me struggling with that. Let's get another one. So again, this one had a little bit of a bad spot, but I'm not sure what it'll look like on the inside. I'm going to cut off the stems, compost, and then I think I'll cut this piece off because I know that's where it got, and that looks good. So see, got a spot, but it doesn't go into the interior, so I think this is going to be really great all the way through. Really, really orange. So take out the seed. All right, then the other thing I'm going to do is peel it. And you can do it just with a regular vegetable peeler like you might use for a carrot or something like that. And it's a pretty thin skin. I think some people might even eat it with the skin on. I'm not sure. Kind of like if you're eating a zucchini or a yellow squash, you can eat the skins on. I have a zucchini here. This is kind of a large one that got a little bit larger than it should before harvest in the garden. It's my last one that I have left for the summer. But zucchini, you can definitely eat the skins on. But usually the winter squash, like butternut squash, acorn squash, pumpkins, people, it has a little bit thicker skin to it, and that's what makes it be able to store for so long. That thick skin protects it against drying out or insects from damaging it. So that's one of the reasons why they call it a winter squash. It ripens later than zucchini and yellow squash, so you harvest it later, but then it can store for months and months and months, and you don't have to put it in the refrigerator. You just need to keep it in a cool-ish spot. So back in the days that everybody had root cellars where they would store food from summer into the winter, they would have butternut squash there in the root cellar, like in the basement type area, where it's not refrigerated, but it's cool. And then on the other hand, it doesn't get frozen. So those kinds of basement conditions in New England are perfect for storing something like this for months. Okay, so in terms of chopping this up for cooking, you can just kind of cube it. And the neck right there is just totally solid, so that's really a good amount of squash right there. So I'm going to cut it up in pieces about that size. Okay, now we're going to make the onion, and Mabel is going to make your eyes hurt, so you should probably back up. I don't know what she wants. She's very angry. Onions? Onions are not for doggies. All right, let's do it. All right, so make a flat so they can't roll around. Cut off the ends. That goes in the compost. Peel it. You're gonna have to lay down, Mabel. Relax. All right, so this is getting cooked, so we can just dice it a bit. All right, so all these onion skins can go into the compost. The other thing that some people do is put your blade like this and smash it, and then that makes the skin come off really easy. Okay, so we're ready to saute the onion and garlic. So I'm gonna turn the stock pot on, and I need some butter. So let me melt that. And in are gonna go the onions and the garlic. So if you do it in a crock pot, it cooks for so long, your onions are gonna get nice and softened on that slower, long cook. But if you're gonna do it on a stovetop, then you need to saute your onions a little bit before you put your squash and your broth in there to cook. So the idea is until they get a little bit soft. When I look up a recipe, it says about 5 minutes. Oh, good. Hey, both these. Okay, so I chopped up the herbs. So the parsley, looks like parsley. Sage, I didn't do all of the sage, some. And then I want to make a point about oregano. Oregano grows on a pretty sort of a woody stem, so you don't usually eat that part. So you take the leaves off the stem and you are left with that, and you chop those. And the same with thyme. Thyme has this little leaf, and you can kind of just, well, I'm not showing it very well, am I? You can grab and usually just kind of strip the leaves off like that, and then you wouldn't put that in the final dish. So I prepared those, and I'm going to put those in my hot onions and get those. A little bit there. And then it's time to put in the broth and the squash. So squash. Ooh, got away. Get that in there. And then I'm using vegetable broth. You could use chicken broth or even beef broth. But here's this style of broth. There's also something called bouillon cubes, where it's like a dried solid cube that you put in water. Or this kind. Or you can buy broth in a can too. Or even there's a kind of broth that you buy that is a concentrated paste in a glass jar, and then you use like a tablespoon of that with a couple cups of water. I don't know the ratios exactly, but it says on the container. Alright, so the squash needs to be covered for it to cook. And now we just need to leave it for a little while so it'll soften up, and then we will blend it to make it creamy, and that's the kind of soup we'll have. Alright guys, the squash has been cooking long enough, it's soft. So usually, oh goodness, and hot. Usually butternut squash soup is made as a blended, like creamy type soup. So I'm gonna do that, and you could use different things. Here's what it looks like, and actually I scooped some out into a bowl because someone in my family would like it not blended, so I said, all right, we'll do a taste test. I happen to have something called an immersion blender. It looks like this, and you plug it in, and it's got a little blade. So I'm going to use that because I have it, but you could put this in a food processor type machine, or you could use a potato smasher for mashed potatoes and just smash it up that way. So now I really like this blender, and I kind of have a funny story about it. I got it one time just before Thanksgiving, and so what's a traditional Thanksgiving dish? Mashed potatoes. So my sister is here, and we make potatoes, and we're going to smash them, and I say, oh my gosh, I got this new tool, an immersion blender. Let's try it on the potatoes. So we stick it into the potatoes, and you turn it on. And at Thanksgiving, we're doing the potatoes, and my sister and I are like, oh my gosh, they're so creamy. This is so easy and fun. This is great. And then we serve them up. And did you know that you can overblend potatoes so that the starch breaks down and they get kind of like a gluey type texture? They were not good, and I was so disappointed because it's one of my favorite foods to go with the Thanksgiving meal. So, note to self, don't overblend your mashed potatoes. Who knew it could happen? I learned the hard way. All right, so I'm gonna blend this butternut squash soup right now, and then I'll show you what it's like. Okay, so one thing I hadn't put in yet is some salt and pepper, so I'm gonna do that. Again, this is like to taste, so if you like a little pepper kick, put more. Salt. Oh boy. Got too much. And then we'll stir it in. So this is all the way blended, and honestly, you can use any kind of blender you have. You could put it in a regular stand blender. Food processor is the one that looks kind of like a bowl-ish type thing. And then this is what it's looking like. And then to be fancy, I saved a little bit of sage. Oh goodness, and a spoon. Butternut squash soup from the garden.